Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of WTS, or I guess as they say on the street, What Ted Says. You know, do you remember as a child when your grandparents gave you a savings bond? Here's a savings bond. Dollars to donuts that had ended up in your drawer, and you probably never looked at them again. Many investors don't understand that the government bonds can be available to them, and with inflation skyrocketing, there's one that you might want to consider now called an I-bond. I wrote about this years ago in the Wall Street Journal. Nobody paid attention, and you should have. In this episode of What Ted Says, I may show you what could be potentially the single best bond alternative you have seen in years. So, what's an I-bond? It's really called an inflation-protected, government-backed instrument, I-bond. And right now it enjoys a whopping 7.12% rate of return. That's as I do this video today. As an annualized yield, your bank account's probably less than 0.1. But don't expect to see this rate on any billboards, and it's easy to see why I-bonds, as they are called, have been overlooked by average investors because, for starters, it's a U.S. savings bond. Boring. Some have may dismiss these as like a quaint relic of mid-century, post-war America, an investment with all the sex appeal of a Chevrolet nestled among a lot of Ferraris. For another, the Treasury Department limits how much you can put into these bonds. You generally, per year, can't put away more than $10,000 worth of I-bonds. So some people say it's just not enough. That's chump change to some affluent older workers who are striving to push their next egg into seven-figure territory in pursuit of a comfy retirement. We know this. I-bonds have seen a spectacular rise as of late as inflation has risen. With the new rate being set every 6 months based upon inflation, they recently rose from 3.54% in May and from 1.67% in November of 2020 to that whopping 7.12% today. So a lot of people want to know, how do these I-bonds work? Well, first of all, I-bonds can only be bought directly from the Treasury, not through a securities dealer, which is why your broker probably has never offered them to you, even though it might be the best thing for you. That's why it gets off of people's radar screens, because you can only buy these through treasurydirect.gov. And because they can't take commissions on them, brokers just don't care. Now, the bonds do mature in 30 years, but they can be redeemed after 12 months with forfeiture of 3 months interest. Even if you do the math, it's way better than having money in a bank account. And given the low interest rates that you're seeing now on bank and savings accounts, I will tell you, in my view, investors are still likely to come out way ahead. Even if you take the penalty by comparison, you do the math yourself. Now, the penalty disappears if the I-bonds are held for at least 5 years, which if inflation keeps rising or it stays at this level, it'll be pretty good. But like Treasury Inflation Protected Securities, or TIPS, T-I-P-S, they are subject to federal income taxes, but they catch a break when it comes to state or local income taxes, especially if you're in one of those higher taxed state income tax states. Yes, there's a $10,000 a calendar year limitation, but for those who want to soak up more I-bonds, you can max them out by basically using other people in your family or buying them at the end of this year and then starting it again in the next year. It's calendar year, it's not fiscal year. Remember, all family members can open their own accounts, and you could create a pool as well. So a family of 4 could amass $40,000 in I-bonds in a single year versus 10. Now, there's got to be some risk, Ted, right? There's got to be some downsides. Well, the biggest is really about what's going to happen with inflation. It's why nobody has been talking about these for the last 20 years. And that adjustment typically takes place in May and in November. So if inflation abates, so would the I-bond interest rate. And what's more is that the I-bond used to have a base rate in addition to the inflation adjustment, but the base rate has generally been around 0 for now. So the entire price really reflects what's happening with inflation and the consumer price index. What are the alternatives? Well, even the most lucrative CDs that you would find at online banks are probably less than 1% as I make this video. The yield on the 1-year Treasury was a paltry 0.17%, and even the 10-year Treasury was at 1.35%. So this could give you a tremendous alternative as part of an overall well-diversified and balanced portfolio. So, with most savings accounts earning less than 0.1%, yeah, that's you. You've now got an option I've given you today through treasurydirect.gov, through something called I-bonds that could help you with your overall portfolio. These bonds could even be good for your kids or grandkids as a starter investment to learn about investing directly with the government. We don't have any idea, I wish I did, about where inflation will head in the future, but I like to provide these timely videos on What Ted Says to keep you educated and informed to do 2 things. What do? Say it with me. Get a fatter wallet and get a bigger net worth. Tell me. Comment in here. Have you ever bought I-bonds before? And of course, hit the subscribe button. You'll get all the goods in here on every Monday and every Thursday. And that's your episode of What Ted Says.